It's a choice. Mathew Littman is the Executive Director of 97%, a bipartisan group working to reduce gun violence. He joins us now live from Los Angeles. Matt, thanks for being with us. What really stood out from what Senator Murphy said was when he said it's a choice. This country chooses to allow these shootings to happen, but it's a choice being made, it seems, by a very small minority, totally opposed to any gun reform. So who is part of this minority? Why are they okay with children being shot dead at school, and why do they get to decide for the rest of the country?
Well, John, first of all, I have to say, while, I'm happy to be on with you, I am sick of being on and talking about this situation. It is not getting better. And we're about to be in a situation where the Supreme Court is going to make it easier to walk around with a gun. And so the situation may just, in fact, be getting worse in the short run. I mean, that is the truth. And I know people don't want to hear it. You're asking about the vast minority of people and why they have so much influence. And it's because of where people vote and the way that the Senate is. In the House, something like universal background checks has passed. In the House, Ethan's law, which is a gun storage law, if that came up for a vote, that would pass. In the Senate, we don't even get a vote on these things. And so it's not the part of the problem, John, is that people don't understand that gun owners who really need to step up in this situation, gun owners, 84% of them favor background checks. Almost 80% of NRA members favor background checks. But you're right, it's that 3% or so that we hear about, 15, 16% of gun owners that we hear about, and they're the loudest voices in the room on social media, in legacy media. And it's not right. We need to be listening to more people, and gun owners have to be a part of this conversation. We need gun owners.
Which is what your group is all about, and that's important to note. But you mentioned this, it's about to get worse. And it's been almost a year since Texas passed a whole host of measures to expand gun access and to allow guns to be carried concealed without permits, as well as creating what's called Second Amendment sanctuaries, which prevent state officials from enforcing federal gun laws. Similar measures have been taken across the US. Texas will join 19 other states with permitless or constitutional carry laws, 5 other states that have declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries. Why is there this momentum on the side of easing gun restrictions? Why is that happening? And the move to try to tighten them is going nowhere.
Well, over the last couple of years, John, we've seen an incredible surge in the amount of gun sales. It's skyrocketed during COVID, for example. So what we're seeing now is we're seeing more of these mass shootings as people have gotten out since the COVID situation changed a few months ago, and more of these mass shootings. I was on CNN, a week and a half ago with Buffalo. I think we've had 10 mass shootings since Buffalo until today. I mean, the numbers are outrageous. And it is true that some of these states are making it much easier to walk around with a gun. There's no question about it. And what we need to happen is first of all, John, of course, most people are responsible with a gun. It should go without saying. We're not getting rid of guns in this country. There are 400 million guns in this country, more guns than there are people. So we need people to be responsible, which is something that we're all working on. We work on it too. But we also need people to understand that we need gun owners to come to the table because, John, we can't do the same thing over and over again. We can't just get up and say, yes, we need universal background checks. You're right, we need universal background checks. And if we have a vote on it, it will fail until we do something differently. And what we need to do differently, and I don't want to be self-promoting at all, John, but we spent a long time, a year, talking to everybody about what's missing in the gun debate before we decided to do something. And what was missing was gun owners, right? And so gun owners, we know that gun owners favor red flag laws. Lindsey Graham favors red flag laws. Florida has red flag laws, but we don't spend enough money on red flag laws. So that may have helped prevent, for example, the Buffalo shooting. There are things that we could be doing that we're not doing right now.
When you say we, what are we talking about here? We're talking about bringing gun owners, because that's what your group does. You bring those who want gun reform together with the gun owners. And when they sit down, as you say, they have a lot in common when it comes to sensible gun reform in this country. So how do you take that from your group into Congress?
Well, it's a great question, John. We have 2 former NRA lobbyists on our advisory board, for example, because they believe in gun reforms, right? And they don't want the way that things have been stopped over the last few years, they're against it. We have Republicans on our team. We have Democrats on our team. And so we do, John, I will say that Congress has listened to us. We've met with dozens of members of Congress. We've met with Republican members of Congress. But the Senate is the Senate, and we can't get a vote on background checks. And even if we did, we'd lose. So what do we need? We need gun owners to come to the table. But we also need, John, when the laws are written, gun owners need to be at the table because again, whatever we've been doing until now has not worked. I mean, you would have thought Newtown, things would have worked when I'm sure you've had Fred Gutenberg on the show, I'm sure, right? You've had Fred Gutenberg on and his wife, Jennifer. They lost their daughter, Jamie. She was shot in the back at school in Florida. Their story is unbelievable. It's heartbreaking. And we keep doing it over and over and over again. So what are we going to do that's different? And the thing that we need to do is, because gun owners are such a powerful group, and there are hundreds of millions of guns in this country, 120 guns per every 100 people in this country, as opposed to, for example, Australia, where it's 15 per 100 people. We need to listen to them. They don't feel that they have a seat at the table in gun reform. We need to give them that seat at the table, John.
You mentioned Sandy Hook, and you mentioned the days after that. It was a mass shooting which President Obama would go on to describe as one of the darkest days of his presidency. Listen to him speaking 3 years after that killing spree. Here we go.
Our unalienable right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, those rights were stripped from college kids in Blacksburg and Santa Barbara, and from high schoolers at Columbine, and from first graders in Newtown. First graders. And from every family who never imagined that their loved one would be taken from our lives by a bullet from a gun.
Yeah, the question I hear most often, and you probably do too, is, if nothing happened after Sandy Hook, then when? As Biden said a few hours ago, when does this country say enough?
Right. And the key is, John, we have to bring everybody to the table. And by the way, John, we've become very okay with violence in this country. We've become very okay with death in this country. I mean, you've covered it over and over again. 1 million people have died from COVID. It seems to be no big deal for a lot of people. People die from gun violence, 42,000 a year. It seems to be no big deal. We need to bring people to the table. I've asked the president's office about having a summit of people, social media organizations, gun organizations, people who train people how to use a gun. We need to entertainment organizations, because why are we so okay with all of these people dying? Why is that okay in this country and nowhere else? And we all need to come together, John. I do say especially gun owners, but all of us, we need to come together and figure out, what are we doing wrong and what can we do differently? We're not going to get that 42,000 to zero, but we've got to get that down, because it's not a number, John. These are people, as President Obama was talking about. These are kids. These are kids getting killed. You can't go to elementary school. You can't go to the supermarket. You can't go to the movie theater. We're supposed to be a free country. There's no freedom. There's no freedom if you can't go anywhere and think that you're going to be safe. I mean, what kind of country is this becoming? So we need to do something. We need to do something differently.